Most engine failures don't happen because of bad luck or poor manufacturing. They happen because someone put the wrong thing in the gas tank. Sometimes it's desperation. Sometimes it's advice from a friend who swears it worked for them. Sometimes it's a viral tip that sounds too good to be true. The damage doesn't announce itself immediately. It happens quietly over weeks or months, until one day the engine misfires, the fuel pump dies, or the injectors clog completely. By then, the repair bill is in the thousands, and most people never connect it back to what they poured in. This video will walk through 7 substances that destroy fuel systems and 3 that actually won't, as long as you understand the limits. By the end, you'll know exactly what to avoid and why the advice you've heard might be costing you more than you realize. Before we get into specific substances, it helps to understand how modern fuel systems work. Your fuel tank isn't just a container. It's part of a sealed, pressurized system designed to deliver fuel at precise volumes and pressures. The fuel pump sits inside the tank, constantly submerged in gasoline, which also cools and lubricates it. From there, fuel travels through filters, lines, and into injectors that spray it in controlled patterns measured in milliseconds. Every component is designed for gasoline or diesel, nothing else. The tolerances are tight. The sensors are sensitive. Contamination doesn't just reduce efficiency. It breaks things. And because the symptoms often take time to appear, people rarely connect the cause to the effect. That delay is what makes bad advice so dangerous. It works just long enough for someone to believe it's safe. The first destructive substance is bleach. People use it trying to pass emissions tests or because they believe it cleans the fuel system. It does neither. Bleach is corrosive to metal and rubber. Fuel pumps have seals, diaphragms, and components that deteriorate rapidly when exposed to chlorine. The fuel lines themselves can degrade. Injectors, which rely on microscopic precision, get damaged by the chemical reaction. The car might run for a few days, maybe even a week, but the pump will start whining, the engine will hesitate, and eventually the system fails. The repair involves replacing the pump, flushing the lines, and often replacing injectors. That's easily $2,000 or more. Bleach doesn't clean anything. It just eats the system from the inside. Number 2 is sugar. This one is famous mostly because of movies and revenge stories. The myth is that sugar dissolves in gasoline and caramelizes in the engine, seizing it completely. The reality is different but still destructive. Sugar doesn't actually dissolve well in gasoline. It sinks to the bottom of the tank and clogs the fuel pump filter. The pump has to work harder, gets hotter, and burns out prematurely. If any sugar makes it past the filter, it clogs injectors, fire, lose power, and eventually stall. The damage is mechanical, not chemical, but the result is the same. The fuel system has to be drained, the tank cleaned, the pump and filter replaced, and the injectors serviced. It's expensive, time-consuming, and entirely avoidable. The reason this myth persists is that people confuse the symptoms with the cause. The engine doesn't seize from caramelized sugar. It just starves for fuel. The third item is water. This one happens more often than people think, usually by accident. A gas can left open, condensation in a nearly empty tank, or contaminated fuel from a bad gas station. Water doesn't burn. When it enters the combustion chamber, it causes misfires and rough running. But the bigger problem is what it does to the fuel system itself. Water corrodes metal components, especially inside the fuel pump and injectors. It also promotes rust inside the tank, which then circulates through the system as particulate contamination. Ethanol-blended fuels can absorb small amounts of water, but once the threshold is crossed, the ethanol and water separate out. That phase separation creates a layer at the bottom of the tank that the pump draws from first. Symptoms include hard starting, rough idle, and poor acceleration. If left unaddressed, the corrosion spreads, and components fail one by one. Most people never realize this because the damage happens slowly. Number 4 is hydrogen peroxide. Some people believe it boosts octane or cleans carbon deposits. It does neither safely. Hydrogen peroxide is an oxidizer. It reacts aggressively with fuel system materials, particularly rubber and plastic components. Fuel lines, seals, and gaskets can swell, crack, or dissolve. The fuel pump itself can be damaged by the chemical reaction. Inside the engine, hydrogen peroxide doesn't increase power. It creates unstable combustion and can damage sensors, catalytic converters, and oxygen sensors. The car might run initially, but within days or weeks, you'll see check engine lights, fuel leaks, rough running, and sensor failures. The repair involves not just replacing damaged parts, but flushing the entire system to remove residual contamination. This is one of those substances that sounds scientific enough to be believable, which is exactly why it's dangerous. The fifth substance is mothballs. This myth comes from old hot rodding forums and the idea that naphthalene raises octane. Decades ago, some racing fuels did contain naphthalene, but modern engines are not designed for it. Mothballs don't dissolve cleanly in gasoline. They leave residue that clogs filters, injectors, and fuel lines. The vapors can damage oxygen sensors and catalytic converters. The engine may run poorly, emit strange smells, and trigger emissions system warnings. Over time, the buildup causes hard starting, poor fuel economy, and eventually component failure. Cleaning this out requires a full fuel system flush, filter and injector replacement, and sometimes catalytic converter replacement. That's thousands of dollars to fix a problem created by trying to save a few cents on octane. The advice might have had some basis decades ago, but it has no place in modern vehicles. Number 6 is Coca-Cola or any soft drink. The idea here is that the acidity cleans carbon or the sugar boosts energy. Neither is true, and both components cause harm. The sugar clogs the system exactly like pure sugar does. The acidity attacks metal and rubber components. The carbonation is irrelevant once it's in the fuel system. But the combination of sugar, phosphoric acid, and various chemicals creates a corrosive sludge that coats everything it touches. Fuel pumps fail. Injectors clog. Sensors read incorrectly. The engine runs rough, misfires, and loses power. The smell alone often tips off a mechanic to what happened, but by then the damage is done. The entire fuel system needs to be drained, cleaned, and parts replaced. This one usually happens as a prank or a misguided attempt at a quick fix, but the results are always the same. The seventh and most dangerous item is anything flammable that isn't fuel. Paint thinner, acetone in large quantities, alcohol not designed for fuel use, or any industrial solvent. People add these thinking they'll clean the engine or boost performance. What actually happens is catastrophic. These substances have different burn rates, different chemical properties, and they attack fuel system materials aggressively. Rubber swells and dissolves. Plastic cracks. Seals fail. But the real danger is inside the engine. Uncontrolled combustion can damage pistons, valves, and rings. The catalytic converter can overheat and fail.
Oxydensensor.
The engine can run dangerously lean, overheat, and suffer permanent internal damage. This isn't something that reveals itself slowly. The damage can happen in minutes to hours. The repair often means a complete fuel system replacement and sometimes engine rebuilding. The cost can exceed the value of the vehicle. This is the one that mechanics see and immediately know the engine's future is limited. Now, the 3 substances that won't ruin your engine, as long as you understand the limits. The first is fuel injector cleaner, specifically products designed and labeled for that purpose. These contain detergents and solvents formulated to clean deposits without damaging components. Used as directed, they're safe and sometimes helpful. The key is following instructions. Overuse or using products not designed for automotive fuel systems can cause problems, but legitimate fuel system cleaners from reputable brands won't hurt anything. They're not magic, but they're not destructive either. The second safe item is a small amount of diesel in a gasoline engine, or vice versa, if caught immediately. If you realize the mistake after a few gallons, the solution is simple. Don't start the engine. Drain the tank, flush the lines, refill with correct fuel, and you're fine. The damage only happens if you run the engine. Diesel in a gasoline engine won't ignite properly and will foul spark plugs and damage the catalytic converter. Gasoline in a diesel engine won't lubricate the injection pump and will cause catastrophic failure. But if you catch it before starting, no permanent harm is done. The important part is not trying to drive it out or dilute it. Just drain and refill. The third safe item is dry gas or fuel line antifreeze, specifically products like HEET. These are alcohol-based additives designed to absorb small amounts of water in the fuel system. In winter climates or in tanks prone to condensation, they actually serve a purpose. The problem is overuse. Too much alcohol can damage rubber components over time and affect fuel system seals. Used occasionally and as directed, they're harmless. Used constantly or in excessive amounts, they create the same problems they're supposed to prevent. The key is understanding when they're necessary and when they're not. The pattern here is clear. Most fuel system damage is avoidable. It comes from misinformation, desperation, or trying shortcuts that don't exist. Modern engines are precise machines. They're designed for fuel and nothing else. Anything added beyond manufacturer-approved additives is a gamble, and the odds are never in your favor. The good news is that once you know what to avoid, prevention is simple. Use the correct fuel. Avoid contamination. Don't trust advice just because it's widespread. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. If you've heard other myths about what you can put in a gas tank, drop them in the comments. And if you've personally dealt with fuel system damage from any of these, share what happened. Understanding the real-world consequences helps everyone. If this cleared up any confusion, hit the like button and subscribe. We'll keep separating fact from fiction.